Welcome to Wrestling Chat with Friends, the Tuesday show. Thank you for the privilege of your time tonight. I am EJ the Collector. I am joined in the first segment tonight by my producer, Cheats. Cheats is right here. What's up, Cheats?
What's good, everyone?
Good to see you. And back from being not medically cleared, he's back in the game tonight, and he's telling all these nerds to be quiet. We got TG in the house. TG, how you doing, pal? Welcome back.
I'm excited to be medically cleared. That's great news.
That's why we didn't have you last week. We got the word late that Dr. Sampson was not going to clear you to join the podcast week, but we're glad you're here tonight. We're glad everybody's
Obviously,
here
a
tonight.
cover story for a wellness violation, but
No doubt
I
about
think
it.
the people at home can figure that out.
First offense, you missed 1 week. So if you don't see TG again, it's upcoming, you'll know what happened. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. A lot is happening, as it always is in the professional wrestling world. But before we get started, I want to talk about what Cheats and I did this past Friday. Anyone who watched us last week know we had local professional wrestling legend icon Timmy Danger on our show. He was here last week to promote the RVA wrestling show that took place Friday the 3rd the 2nd at Hardywood Brewery. I got to go, showed up a little early. Cheat showed up around bell time.
Yep.
Timmy and Neil Sharkey over there at RVA Wrestling gave us real VIP treatment. So I first want to thank them for allowing us to come by, get a little look at the group as they were kind of putting that show together. We got to watch sound check of the bands, got to interact with a lot of the wrestlers there who were all pros, all respectful. It was a lot of fun. Thanks also to Hardywood. Justin, the promotions director there, took real good care of us. Cheats, I had a great time. I don't know about you, but I thought it was fantastic. And really, our professional wrestling is alive and well in Richmond.
I had an amazing time, and I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time. And what I mean by that is I will exit the show after this part. But I did want to specifically come on to thank Timmy Danger and everybody at RVA Pro Wrestling. They were an amazing, amazing group to be around. It was an amazing night of local wrestling action and music intertwined in. Hardywood was the perfect host venue for the wrestling promotion, and the stories they told, the wrestling that they had, it was so much fun to see that in our hometown of Richmond, Virginia. It was awesome. It was so great. I was missing a little bit after the exit of some of our previous friends and previous promotions, and to be able to see RVA Pro Wrestling alive and well and selling out shows in like 28 hours, it was great. It was so much fun.
Couldn't agree more. We saw some action by Sledge Gibson, another local friend of ours was in town. He faced Tim and got the win. We saw Erica Lee, Mila Johnson, Jordan Blade, Ace Montana, the manager of managers, Mr. Salazar was there, Leo Kirby, who we were both very impressed with, Leo Kirby on Friday night, and everybody else put on a great night of wrestling for us. So thank you to all those guys. Special shout out to another local professional wrestler who was there, Ace Montana. Ace Montana made one of my childhood dreams come true on Friday night. He and I were talking with a couple of other folks. I think it was toward the end of the show. I was telling him how about where my wrestling fandom kind of began, and I dropped the name, the Rock and Roll Express, my brother and I's favorite tag team when we were 12, 13. This is going back 1987. Ace Montana pulls me in close to him. TG, you're going to love this. Pulled me in close, pulled out his cell phone, called Robert Gibson of the Rock and Roll Express, and handed me the phone. And I got to have a quick 3-minute conversation with one of my idols when I was 12 years old, Robert Gibson of the Midnight Express. I checked off my full Rock and Roll Express bucket list is now complete because I've gotten a cameo from Ricky Morton and I've talked to Robert Gibson on the phone. Ace Montana was awesome for doing that. Thank you. Ace also invited me, I did 2 days ago on Sunday, to his RVA Wrestling Academy that he runs out in Mechanicsville. I got to go out there on Sunday afternoon. He had a class of about 12, 15 folks, young, hungry, up-and-coming professional wrestlers in the area. I got to watch about 2.5 hours. Timmy and Neil were there as special guest instructors, and Ace allowed me just to sit in, watch practice. I saw the next crop of wrestlers getting their practice in. And I got to get inside a ring. I was inside the squared circle. Definitely like a first for me. Got some great pictures. We have posted photos of Friday's show on our Facebook page, Wrestling Chat with Friends, the group. So go there, check it out. While you're there, join the page, join our channels on YouTube, follow us on Twitter. So this community is now starting to grow. We got some great contacts. And in the weeks going forward, maybe on Tuesdays, maybe on Thursdays, we're going to have some of these local talent on our show to talk about their wrestling journey and where they're going from here in 2024. A lot of fun talking about wrestling. Anything else you want to mention? Toys for Tots was the beneficiary of T-shirt sales from Punks for not Toys for Tots, Punks for Presents. Sorry about that. Punks for Presents, which is a local charity raising money for kids who are in hospitals, and proceeds from Friday's show went to Punks for Presents, a great promotion. It was just a ton of fun. Can't say enough about it. And we're going to be heavy into RVA wrestling going forward on this show, Wrestling Chat with Friends, in the future. About cover it, Cheats. I do a good job.
You covered it. They did an amazing job. We'll figure out how to get EJ the Collector in the ring. So EJ didn't tell you this, but he sent me his authority, like the DPOR form. So the Department of what is it?
Occupational something.
Professionals.
Professional.
It's the ones that license people. So EJ went as far as getting a license just in case he got chopped in the ring or got body slammed. It's only a matter of time before EJ the Collector is a major part of this RVA Pro Wrestling show. I'm sure about it. And so we've got to figure it out. They did a great job. They, as many people was there and how fast the show sold out. I was surprised to learn how many people didn't know wrestling in Richmond exists. I posted something on social media. Everybody was like, where is this? How do I get involved? So there's a huge market for RVA Pro Wrestling to be successful in the future. I can't wait to see what they do. I can't wait to have more of them on the show, more of the wrestlers and performers on the show. They're fantastic. It was great. It was a great night. It was an awesome night.
Yeah, they sold out in less than 2 days, 250 tickets. Next time they come through Richmond, hopefully, again, it's at Hardywood. I know Hardywood's interested. They're going to have more space, more tickets, hopefully, because there is a demand. So RVA Wrestling, Timmy, Neil, and the crew, big shout out, man. Thanks so much for having us on Friday.
All right.
Cheats is going to pod down because we're going to get into the happenings. Every week, TG, there are just more breaking news, more reports, more stories. Unlike me, I think you try to stay somewhat above the fray. I think you don't go too deep into following rumors, following the dirt sheets, and reacting. But, we're going to get into Cody and Roman. But overall, how have you felt about the last week, just seeing the reaction to everything that WWE has put out in the last week?
How have I felt about the reaction, or how have I felt about what's actually happening?
Not what's actually happening, just about the reaction to the happenings. It
is reminiscent in some respects of the reaction to Conan O'Brien being fired as the host of The Tonight Show because he wasn't doing well ratings-wise compared to his predecessor, Jay Leno, who, of course, came back and took that spot and was number one again thereafter. And I think that it's not that the people who were pro Conan didn't have some points. I liked Conan O'Brien better I enjoyed his talk show better than I enjoyed Jay Leno's talk show. But it is the fervor and intractability with which they made their arguments that always made me cast a little bit of a skeptical eye or disdain towards them. And I think that we are sort of in a same situation with the whole Cody Roman thing. Again, it's not that they don't have a point about some of this. It's just that, first of all, it's wrestling. Give it time. I bet you things will change in the next 48 hours between now and the press conference on Thursday, for example. We'll get into this later, but I mean, anybody who watched Raw last night sees how much hedging they are doing by being very clear that the match has not been made official yet. And the second thing is just like, I think the the refusal to see the other side of the argument, meaning, as we have talked about on numerous occasions, if you have the opportunity to have The Rock and Roman Reigns headline WrestleMania, you have to do it. You have to, because The Rock is the biggest star ever to come out of professional wrestling, and you would be insane from a business standpoint not to do it. Now, should they have done that last year and then done Cody and Roman this year? Yeah, that would have been better. Should they have not had Cody win the Royal Rumble if this was the plan? Absolutely not. That's insane and makes no sense. But I think that if I am a wrestling fan who's going to WrestleMania to boo the main event, who's the joke on? The joke is on you, because guess what? You just paid thousands of dollars that the company you hate now has.
Mm-hmm.
And great, you got to boo, but guess what? Everybody get rich because of people like you. Congratulations.
I did tee up getting into the Rock and Roman, but before I want to go too deep in that, I want to mention something else that has happened, which I would consider amongst the biggest news in WWE storyline wise as pertains to setting up WrestleMania. That occurred Friday night on SmackDown when the inevitable finally happened. We've been talking about it for a while. When were they going to do it? How are they going to do it? Bayley, the Women's Royal Rumble winner, who was setting out to dethrone Rhea Ripley so Damage Control can hold all the gold, kind of came out and basically turned to her stablemates and said, and she said it in Japanese, which I think was a nice touch, kind of like, what's up? And immediately confronted them saying, you've been making fun of me. I want to do this, and was summarily attacked. The split has now occurred. Bayley is out of the Damage Control stable that she founded. Kudos to her. She fought back valiantly and came out. I mean, that instant face turn, I think, was executed very well, and told Io Sky, it's me and you. It was suspected because of what the other plans were, but I thought that was very well done. And I think with everything that happened with Roman and Rock and Cody, I think took a little shine off this Damage Control breakup. I mean, it's the SmackDown equivalent sort of to Judgment Day. They have been sort of running the show, certainly obviously on the women's side. And this face run for Bayley is going to culminate at WrestleMania. And I just thought all the attention, especially online afterwards, was taken up with Rock and Roman and Cody, and it sucked all the oxygen out of the room. And I just don't think Damage Control and that storyline breakup got its due just maybe in the universe. It was a great segment on TV, but there wasn't a ton of chatter about it afterwards. And do you think that's gonna, is the central storyline of Rock, Roman, and Cody going to overshadow everything else that WWE has been doing for the last several months, but particularly as it pertains to Damage Control?
Two thoughts on that. The first is, I think that the way that they did it was good, but it felt like they skipped from like chapter 8 to chapter 12 in the story. That I think there were some links in the chain that should have led up to that segment that I think were missing. The segment itself was good, and I think the outcome is good, and I think Bayley being a face, as we've talked about, I think that's all great. I think they probably accelerated the timeline for that in part because partially due to the Vince stuff, and I think partially due to other things. I think the thinking is they're trying to generate as much news as they can. But I don't just think it's the Vince stuff. I also think knowing that The Rock, I think they're looking at the same glass you're looking at, and they're seeing it as, instead of half empty, which you're not wrong. I think they're seeing it as half full. And what I mean by that is, I think they're saying, we are going to maximize eyeballs on this product, especially in the next few days, because of The Rock being involved. So let's pull the trigger on all of our stuff now so that more people will be watching, like next week or Friday. The Bayley segment that airs on Friday will likely have more people watching, because The Rock's going to be there again, than it would have if they had continued kind of the slow burn or The Rock was involved or all that. So I think there's a strategy behind it. I think in a narrative sense, it felt like they kind of jumped ahead a little bit. But it's all good. I mean, I think this is where the story needs to go. The second thing about it is, here's what's interesting. You now have a situation, not to bring it all back to Cody again, but you now have a situation where presumably, and I'd say it's not, nothing's for sure, but I would say it's much more likely than not that if they continue on the trajectory that they have portrayed up to now, which, as we know, especially with Cody, may not be where we're headed, neither Royal Rumble winner will be in a WrestleMania main event. Now, again, big caveat to that, because Cody, I think, still is going to factor in somehow. But if they are set on doing Roman versus The Rock, and
that'll be night 2.
That'll be the night 2 main event for sure. And then you have the following other like, first of all, I think they think Rhea versus Becky is a bigger match, and from the perspective of the company. And I would say yes, based on this relative status of the 2 stars, the star power of the 2 people. So if it's Becky and Rhea, I think that has a better chance to main event. I think Seth and Drew for the title would have a better chance to main event than whatever Cody would wind up doing, or whatever Bailey and Io wind up, wherever they wind up. So what's interesting to me about what has happened over the last week, to go back to your original question, is it feels like, I think through a combination of external circumstances and, I don't want to say bad booking yet, because I think we're still not sure where we're headed. But
there's still a pretty well publicized event that's going to put the sort of period on the end of these match plans.
We're going to know in 48 hours what kind of, I think, what's up. But what I was going to say was, I think what has struck me is how, as good as the event was, it kind of feels like the status of winning the Royal Rumble is being devalued a bit because of what has happened since.
And you think that may just be a 1 year off thing, because there's no precedent for it beforehand. And
I think
there are.
I think it's
external circumstances. So perhaps Cody perhaps not main eventing night 1 or 2 against someone like a Seth or a Roman. Bailey not competing against Io in a night 1 presumably main event. Yeah, I mean, they are victims of circumstances. So let's talk about what those circumstances are and how we got here. I asked this question of you a few weeks ago, and we started alluding to it, but we've had a Royal Rumble, which Cody won. Cody stands in the corner, points to the WrestleMania sign, points directly at Roman, screams his name. That was in late January. We had the following week, on Friday SmackDown, Cody invites The Rock to the ring. This happened just a handful of days ago. Gives him a handshake, a hug, and it, by all appearances, gives his place to The Rock, which immediately sets the world on fire, the internet on fire, sets wrestling internet fans on fire. There have been worldwide hashtags. There were strong chants Monday for "We Want Cody." There was a "Rocky sucks" chant. There's this press conference on Thursday. There are reports from everybody that says that Rock is definitely competing at WrestleMania 40, which seemed to dash some hopes of The Rock basically handing this back to Cody maybe on Thursday. So I'll ask you, Tom, where are we today on this?
Here's, I think, the top line for me. I am not one of those people who has any problem whatsoever with Cody not, let's say it's January 15th. I have no issue whatsoever with Cody not being in the main event of WrestleMania. I have no issue whatsoever with Cody not finishing his story at this year's WrestleMania. I'm okay with that if the alternative is Rock versus Roman. As we discussed ad nauseum, biggest match you could possibly do. I think when all the news broke in the beginning of the year about The Rock becoming a board member and all that stuff, I said at the time, if they're not getting him at WrestleMania, they're stupid, because the deal that they basically gave him, like the amount of additional financial compensation that he will get as a result of all this is potentially tens of millions of dollars. And if you are essentially ponying up that amount of money and he's just going to have like a behind the scenes role, that's insane. So all of those dots to me connect perfectly fine. Here's the one issue I have. If all of that is the game plan, and I think it was the game plan, you are idiotic to have Cody win the Rumble again.
I don't think any of those guys are idiotic, which I think is why this conspiracy mill is still kind of churning a little bit. If presumably Rock signs this deal with TKO on the 3rd, and as has been reported that part of this deal was you're going to be facing Roman at WrestleMania. Punk gets hurt during the Royal Rumble, and there could be some this talk whether they made a call and called an audible in the ring. I don't think that's the case. I think Cody's plans was to win this back to back. He also then, like I said, he gets up, he points at Roman. So how did we get from that? Why? I mean, smart people are running it. If it's not an Ari Emanuel, Dwayne Johnson politicking situation, then how does that happen? I mean, I don't want to believe that was the case. And I think from a business sense, to all your points you made, having Rock and Roman makes a ton of sense to have this. But then why was and you can make an argument, and I've made this argument, this is what I sort of feel about it is, if The Rock didn't sort of insert himself in this somewhere, then why are you messing with a story? Why are you throwing a wrench in a storyline that you were logically making for the last 2 years? It's fine to have swerves. And again, I'm kind of with you where, I still believe, and I'm sure you do too, Cody will finish the story. Cody will win that belt. I'm pretty sure at some point, because it's because of the story. And I'm basing this solely not of what I want as a fan, but of the story they've been building for us. Seth's title is not the title Dusty lost. It's that title. WrestleMania is the iconic place to do it. So just, if it's not The Rock signing in, taking over, The Rock, and I'm saying this, but and I do want to bring this up, is there any shine off The Rock because his last few movies have flopped? The XFL is kind of a flop. I think we may have missed peak.
Oh, I don't know if the XFL is a flop. I think he made a ton of money on that merger. Well, I think that was a successful.
Yeah, but don't you think the XFL is going to be gone and it's not going to last more than 1 or 2 seasons max?
Not now, because the USFL was backed by the NFL, and now that they have merged with the USFL, they have the NFL's backing, so they're not going anywhere. The NFL has unlimited money. You
don't think this is going to be a 1-2 year like previous attempts? Okay, well, no. Then just answer my core question. If it's not The Rock basically coming in and taking over, if The Rock's on the board and Triple H isn't, The Rock is Triple H's boss and can supersede him creatively. We want to talk about what Triple H's future, may look like, towards the end. But why so many seemingly missteps in the handling of Roman, the handling of Cody, the presentation of Cody, if at the first of the year this was the plan?
Here's the problem. I think the one thing that they should have done that they did not do is they should have had a drop dead date for making a decision about The Rock. Meaning they should have said, look, Rock, we would love, per The Rock, they were talking about it over a year ago, which is not a surprise. But what they should have done is said, look, Rock, you know this better than anybody. We have to have runway to make this all work the best way that it can.
Rock said, I want a great story for this. And that, if you don't have a drop dead date, it makes that story tougher to pull off great.
Correct. That's a great point. His contention, which I'm And I don't know if I bought that. I was like, I'm sure that there's 10 stories they could have told, especially last year when you had the bloodline was as hot as it's ever been. If that's the case, if his argument is we needed a good story to tell, fair enough. But like you said, what goes part and parcel with that is you have to have that space to tell a story. Okay. So you go to Rock last summer or whenever, and you say, look, obviously you are our number one choice. You are our number one choice. No question. But we have to have an answer by a certain time or this isn't going to work. I never talk about my work, and I'm not going to go into detail, but what I will say is it is analogous to if I am pitching an op-ed for placement in a particular state, typically the number one place we want to publish it is whatever the number one newspaper is in the state. Now, there's some exceptions, like you might want to publish in a state capital if it's a state policy thing, but here's the point. So, like, let's say hypothetically we were in California. Bad example. California is really tough and there's a ton of big papers. Bad example. Let's say we were in Iowa. So we're in Iowa. Biggest paper in Iowa is Des Moines Register. I'm pretty sure about that. So if I pitch something to the Des Moines Register, and I don't get a response in, let's say, 4 business days, I'm going to follow up and say, hey, you guys are our first choice. Wanted to see if we're still under consideration. If not, respectfully, we're gonna move on because we have to get this thing placed because we're, whether it's a policy thing or whatever it is, there is a window here that we have to hit. If we just leave it with you all for a month, it does us no good because it just dies and never publishes. Similarly, you go to the Rock and say, you're obviously our first choice for a million reasons. And if you want us to kiss your butt and tell you those reasons, we'll be happy to do that. But we need to have a decision from you by December the 15th or whatever the date is. And then we can go from there. We can build it. Okay. I think that was the mistake they made. And for whatever reason, whether it was commitments, whether it was stuff dealing with the XFL merger, whatever the reason was, they were not able to get this stuff in place until January. That still confuses me as to why they didn't just have somebody else win the Rumble. Why have the Rock win the Rumble? It's that's going to get a mixed reaction, but at least then you're like, okay, there isn't here's the fundamental problem, and this is where I am sort of agree with the nerds on this point. You are making Cody kayfabe wise, like his character, at least as of this recording, and it could change in 2 days, but as of this recording, you're making him look like an idiot.
An idiot and a eunuch,
Not only does it not make sense from a storytelling perspective, but you're also like, Cody, you won the Rumble, but you're not going to get the main event at WrestleMania after you've been talking about it for a year? Sort that one out. And you'll notice in the segment last night on Monday, Cody was in that segment and they barely let him talk. And because they're like, we don't really have a way to explain this yet. We're still working on it. The million monkeys and a million typewriters are typing. And until we get to that press conference Thursday night, we don't have an explanation.
Now, I said this the other day, Roman beating Rock, it elevates Roman. Cody then beating Roman, wherever it is, whenever it is, might ultimately further elevate Cody. Cody, I mean, but you've seen the reaction since maybe last Friday or since he won the Rumble. How much more elevation does Cody need? It is right there. He is the number one babyface in the company now. He is superseded, in my opinion, CM Punk. He has superseded LA Knight. Everything he is doing week to week, showing that, and do you think they expected the reaction they got over the weekend and into Monday, or do you think it's because I think what the rumblings are, this could turn into a Daniel Bryan situation. I don't know if WWE was kind of hoping for that in the back end. I still don't know what the intentions are in this. Let's just even further go down this rabbit hole a little bit and say, let's just presume that on January 3rd, when The Rock signed, that's when they knew it would be Rock and Roman. Okay, so we've already
Still had
questioned.
4 weeks to figure it out. And
We've already had. Why do you question if Roman wins? If you went ahead and have, if you know you're doing Roman Rock and you want to have CM Punk win, forget CM Punk gets hurt. CM Punk winning, challenging
it works.
Seth Rollins,
Yep.
that
It
works. And but the question would be, well then, what bag is Cody holding if he didn't win the Rumble and The Rock's chasing Roman? That could have set something up naturally for Drew the way it's going. Drew and Cody wouldn't be satisfying, I don't think.
There
Seth,
are
yeah,
a number of different ways that you could have gone if you have. How about this? Even if Punk wins and he's hurt, easy fix, Elimination Chamber. Done.
That's what I was going to ask you. Would it have been worse if the plan was going to be for Punk to win and he wins it, but got hurt in the first place and then can't do his match?
From a narrative standpoint, it's way better, I think. I mean, it's not great because Punk is hurt. Obviously, that's bad. But I'm saying there's 100 ways you can write yourself out of that, and you can still you can do a number of things. One, you can still maintain suspense for WrestleMania because now it's like, oh gosh, we got to watch what's going to happen in Perth because we don't even know who the men's, who the two contenders are going to be for the titles, etc. And plus it gives Punk Punk already has kind of a ready-made story now because he got hurt, but I mean, it gives Punk an even bigger thing where my dream has been to main event WrestleMania and I had it. I won it. I won the Rumble. I was going to do it and I got hurt. And so it's the same story we have now, but it's even heightened more because he actually did it. You could have had any of the following people win the Rumble, and you could have worked your way out of this. Drew McIntyre for sure. CM Punk, whether he got hurt or not. Gunther, there were some possibilities there where you could do stuff with him. There's probably one or two other people that could have been. The Rock, obviously, could have been in there. I think that you probably had, sitting down and thinking about it, 4 to 6 people who could have won the men's Rumble, and you still would have wound up with something where you could have gotten Rock and Roman, and at the same time, you wouldn't have had this weird situation with Cody where it's like, what do you like? There would have been fan backlash potentially to. Maybe not if Punk won, but if let's say Drew won, which would have been okay because he's a, heel. But there would have been people who would have been disappointed that Cody didn't win.
Definitely.
Again. But that would have been okay because it still doesn't make Cody's character into sort of an emasculated dum-dum, which is where he is now.
So again, here's my question. If we're both sort of agreeing on that, why are you telling nerds to be quiet then? You sound like you're on their side. You're like you're empathizing with what they're complaining about.
Because even though in the same way that I found Conan O'Brien to be a more entertaining talk show host than Jay Leno, you can't argue, in my opinion, with bottom line business and dollars. I'm not saying it's as satisfying narratively. There are definitely holes here. But I stand by what I've been saying for 2 years. The biggest possible match you can put on is Rock versus Roman in the main event of WrestleMania. The second thing about this is this. It also now allows you, potentially, unless Rock can somehow politic his way into beating Roman, which for me would be like, I would hate it, but then there would be a part of me that would be like, oh, I kind of respect this. I really kind of respect this. This is so dumb, but I kind of respect it.
There were reports. I'm not saying I believe them, but there were reports that from WWE sources that Rock was actually at one time potentially trying to politic his way to a win.
That I find that hard to believe if the title's on the line, because I think even Rock would be like, how would this even work? Like, I'm not going to be. I might wrestle one more match after this.
Would Cody defeating The Rock at SummerSlam be a completion of the story? I mean, does Rock want to be the one?
In a way,
does The Rock want to be the one to give to give the superstar Cody this shine? Does he want to get a part of that?
I think in 2024 it's a bigger deal to beat Roman Reigns. I don't think it's a bigger deal to beat the 53-year-old Rock or whatever he is.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the other thing, and this is again why I'm like, everybody calm down. What this is going to do, even in a worst realistic case scenario, what this is going to do is give us a heel Rock, and it is going to be spectacular. If he comes out and he's like, please call me Director Johnson. I'm a member of the board of directors.
I don't think he'll go full bore into a heel character. I think he's naturally, I think some of the Rocky sucks chants you're seeing, and I think because of the Cody situation, The Rock is going to go in as the heel to this. If The Rock showed up either last night on Raw or if he shows up this Friday on SmackDown, which he better show up a few times, maybe, and Thursday we'll see, I would expect a major heel reaction to The Rock at this point.
And I think he would be fine with it because he's like, I get to reach into my bag of tricks that I haven't used in years. And I'll tell you something else. The promo that Roman kind of lost in all this because of what happened after Roman cut his promo. The promo that Roman cut on Friday was, I think, the best promo that he has cut since the Sami Zayn era of the Bloodline.
Sure.
I think some people didn't like it because they were like, oh, he belittled Seth. And I'm like, he's a heel. I don't care. I don't care about that. It's fine. But I always say the best heels are the heels who make good points. And that's what I loved about this Roman Reigns. And I think that if he is in a feud with his cousin, that they are both going to collaborate and work together on stuff where it's like, it's going to be intense and it is going to be fantastic. Even if they're both heels, who cares? That just helps as far as I'm concerned. Here's the one thing, having said all of what I've said, the narrative stuff is a problem, but when you get to WrestleMania, I think it becomes less of a problem because now you're there and it's just about the match. The one thing that is a concern is the WrestleMania crowd is kind of a mix between sort of some corporate people who are kind of, they're I don't want to say casual fans because they're shelling out or money is being shelled out to get them to WrestleMania. So you have a little bit of that, like you do with the Super Bowl, for example. So like the Super Bowl, you of course will have like diehard Chiefs fans, diehard 49ers fans, but then you also have a bunch of people who work for
people who are there to see and be seen.
Exactly. Who are their corporate affiliation with the league or are there because they are, they have a show that debuts on CBS after the game or whatever. Okay. The problem that I foresee, the one problem that it does worry me a little bit is the potential for that audience to ruin the main event with their disdain for the fact if it's Rock and Roman only. And that to me would be annoying because I think it's going to be a good WWF main event style match between two guys who both want to make each other look good, whatever happens.
Mm-hmm.
And, sort of akin to like Rock and Hogan, where that match was very theatrical, but the crowd was super into it. But if you have people doing the, who was it? Lex Luger and Barry Windham when Flair left? Was that who it was? When it was like, we want Flair. And it just like, when it gets to the point of being disruptive, then I think that's something they're going to have to at least figure out.
Okay. Well, let's just talk let's just put our prediction hat on and talk, where does this leave? If we have Rock and Roman, where does this leave Cody? And because if he challenges Seth, that's going to feel, Seth made a great argument last week to Cody about facing him. But the argument to that is Cody's beaten Seth 3 times. There's nothing for Cody to prove to Seth. Seth needs to beat Cody, and I would presume, I think it'd be better for the story if Seth exercises that demon and beats Cody at WrestleMania. So if that's what we're going to get Cody not getting his shot against Roman, lose against The Rock, plus taking an L to Seth. Is that a great scenario? So first question is, what do you do with Cody at this point? What will be the ideal scenario for you?
I think Cody is a man without a country right now, because I think the options you have. That's
why nerds are angry, because for 2 years it's being built up, and now we're talking post Royal Rumble back-to-back win.
Right, but I will say, I don't think like that is partially a problem of what's happening with The Rock, but it's actually something that I think is a bigger issue because of CM Punk. Because if CM Punk doesn't get hurt, then you have a clear path to Seth versus CM Punk, easy. And then you have potentially Drew and Cody, or there are a number of options for him. I think the problem now is because you don't have somebody who's an obvious challenger for Seth, I think it's probably Drew. And the interesting wrinkle there is this promo that Sammy did on Monday. I could see that. Like, I don't think it's, I'll put it this way. I will be very surprised if Cody Rhodes is wrestling for that title at WrestleMania. To me, that makes no sense for the reasons you just described. One, Seth should beat him. I mean, if you're going to have him, Seth lose again to him, that's dumb. And then also to win the title, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
The one thing I will say, Seth's promo 2 weeks ago or a week ago Monday was so good and so compelling and convincing that I was like, okay, if they do this now after that promo, I wouldn't hate it. I could go along with it. I think now with everything that has happened since, I'm like, well, now this is just dumb. Like that shouldn't happen. And I think interestingly, another thought that crossed my mind on Friday watching that segment with Cody was what made that Seth segment so effective and what made Roman's promo so effective is that both guys, yes, they are in character, but they believe what they're saying. They really do. And that's what makes a great wrestling promo and what makes it so compelling. Cody, that it's just implausible. The stuff that he's saying and like the handoff to The Rock, I'm like, nobody believes this. Right. And most importantly, Cody doesn't believe it. So anyway, to get back to your question, I don't know what you do with him, because I think that the obvious thing to do would be to make, and they may do this, to make the main event of WrestleMania a triple threat with Cody and with Roman and with The Rock. Here's the problem. You now have these two things that Cody has done that are completely contradictory. One was pointing at Roman, like very clearly after he won the Rumble. It's like,
shouted his name, yeah.
Unambiguous. Friday night, he says, I'm not coming after you at WrestleMania. Unambiguous.
Yeah.
So again, you're in the situation where Cody, you've already made him look like an idiot, and now whatever you do is going to make him look like more of an idiot. So I don't know how you get out. I mean, the only thing that you could potentially do is if you had, and nobody would like this, just to be clear. I mean, people would be like, it's going to be a good match, but I hate this. Is if you had some trump card like Okada, you just introduce, build him up for have him attack Cody or whatever, build that up for a month and a half, and then have Cody and Okada at WrestleMania. I think people would be like, I hate that he's not in the main event, but Cody and Okada, okay. Like that is at least something that is appealing to me as a Cody fan. I want to see this. Everything else that is possible, other than like even the triple threat they're gonna be mad because it's like it should have just been Cody. So everything else that is possible, I don't think there is something that comes to mind that could satiate those fans unless you make yourself look really stupid and now say like, oh, The Rock's not going to wrestle Roman. Then what?
Royal Rumble winner. I mean, let's just remember that. And going into Thursday, you know, I at this point, I think I would take that triple threat because I think I really expect, because I've been watching the product for a year and a half. I've watched what they've been presenting me week after week, and it is a episodic story. That story doesn't culminate in Philadelphia with Cody and Okada. As much as I'd love to see it, it doesn't come. And I think this must be driving a lot of the fans nuts. Is this anywhere when you got that poster board of all the string and everything like that? This all kind of goes back to the feeling that The Rock has inserted himself somewhere. Now, they made Ari Emanuel. I get every reason why TKO wants them in the fold, but let's shift now to how this has potentially undermined the story that Triple H, as creative director, has presented us for 2 years. I don't want to really get too much into the Vince stuff because everyone knows the Vince stuff. It's gross. Vince is gone. I don't think he'll end up getting the full Benoit treatment, because if you remove him from the library, you're going to be cutting out a lot of stuff.
And I also will, again, not to in any way defend Vince McMahon. Chris Benoit murdered.
Definitely.
I mean, that's whatever we think of Vince. I do think that's
a euphemism for removing him from all mention and all video and stuff. If he gets that treatment,
and it's also, as you said, it's impossible. He's way more intertwined with everything the company's ever done.
Right, but it's easy for them not to not show clips of him. It's easy for them to reference him.
They took, apparently, I saw a thing on Twitter where they're taking Brock off of 2K24, which comes out in like a month or something.
Brock has been pulled. Brock seemingly is pretty much seemingly would be gone for the foreseeable future, if not forever. Definitely not a auspicious way to send him out. Does this make the Undertaker only have one loss at WrestleMania now?
I don't think it's going to be like when somebody, like, there's NCAA violations and there are wins that get vacated. I don't think that is going to happen. But
what also presumably is going to happen, because this isn't going away anytime soon, is there's going to be some investigation, and TKO may want to scrub that place down with bleach and remove everything and everybody associated with that. And that really could toy with the future of that company, because there are lots of ingrained people who are essential to that company who probably know where some bodies are buried. So
there's two big things about this. The first is, now that Vince has been, very quickly removed from the company, whatever happens with him is going to kind of exist to some extent in its own, like, not separate universe, but like that's going to play out in the court system, and we'll see where that goes.
Mm-hmm.
But as you said, he is so connected to certain people who are still employed by WWE that you wonder, out of an abundance of caution, they're going to for sure going to conduct an investigation. Is this after? So here's my prediction. The investigation is probably going to last through WrestleMania. And then after WrestleMania, I think you are going to see a house cleaning. And there's one reason, the obvious reason is the substantive one, but the secondary thing, and where I think this is going to be a wider net, is the fact that you just had this merger between between UFC and WWE to create, under the Endeavor umbrella, to create TKO. And even before all this stuff happened, there was this story from, business story about how, like, there's redundancy with these two organizations, because obviously there is overlap in terms of presentation and structure and function to the way that UFC operates and the way that WWE operates. So even before all this, people were talking correctly about how there are going to be, for example, you don't need two separate graphic design departments. You can consolidate those, lay people off, and then you just have one TKO graphic design department. because of that, there are people potentially on the UFC side who know how to do a lot of the things that some of the Vince people on the WWE side may know how to do. So you may not need them, even if they are, producers or things like that. Okay. So with all of that said, I think to bring it back to where you started the question, the thing that comes to my mind is there is a non-zero chance that Triple H does not survive this, because he's the guy's son-in-law. He is obviously part of the inner circle with Vince in terms of creative and everything, and the business and everything else over the last couple of years. And that, to me, I think, just looking at it from I don't know what the particulars are, so it may come out like, oh yeah, this is justified. I'm not saying it's not justified, but from a fan and business and story perspective, that is going to be a major blow to the company, a major blow if he is gone, because he has really been the guy who I think, even when Vince was there, was a key part of the creative vision.
Yep.
And then after Vince left, he was obviously the driving force. And when the merger happened, he got the sort of anointed as you are the guy, you are the creative leader of this company, period, the end. And that is the one area, creative, where I think even if you bring in somebody from, whether it's from the outside or from UFC, you're not going to be able to replicate somebody who has the, dare I say, pedigree that Triple H has creative.
Well done. Two last names along those lines. Shawn Michaels.
Shawn, I think, he's a little more sequestered because he's been so focused on NXT. I mean, I don't know.
As far as just knowing where bodies are buried, as far as knowing what Vince. I mean, if you believe any of these allegations, if Vince was trying to get some salacious stuff with Brock, what's to stop him from trying to do that with Shawn? And probably not with Hunter because he's married.
I can tell you. I can tell you the answer to that. The answer to that is Jesus Christ.
Okay.
Shawn is a big time God Squad member, and I think that if Vince is sending him texts that are akin to what he's sending to Brock, Shawn at a minimum is going to be like, "Can you please stop? Stop."
That's fair. That's fair.
I'll pray for you, Vince. Please stop this. Stop this.
Here's one more. But go ahead. Finish.
No, I was just going to say, I think Shawn's probably okay, except insofar as he's Triple H's guy. So if Triple H goes, what does that mean for Shawn? I don't think Shawn's going to get swept up in but people like Michael PSA's, Bruce Pritchard, those kinds of people, it's hard for me to see them surviving past WrestleMania. And
last name, Nick Khan.
So that's an interesting one. Nick Khan.
This would really, if you clean house and up to and including those guys too, this would put a completely different perspective on Endeavor and TK Holdings. Not just, it's going to be unlike what they could have possibly expected, even knowing that because they filed it, that Vince McMahon was a reputational risk to the company. But Nick Khan probably wrote that, and
the thing about Khan where he might be okay is I think he's a guy that they brought in specifically as a business savvy outsider, as opposed to somebody who was one of these fellow carnies who was involved in was in the locker room at one point, was one of the boys at one point. I think that might be what protects Khan, is just that he has been so business focused and not as much engaged with the, I guess, the sort of day-to-day, like I said, locker room stuff. So I don't know if Vince is connected to him in that way. Sort of like is some of the people who have been part of WWE legal in the past. They're probably, I don't think they would be necessarily implicated in this. Although in this case,
I can only just imagine
the plaintiff was a paralegal. That probably creates a problem.
I think some of this will depend on that investigation and just how much bleach do you want to, does Endeavor and TKO want to pour down? There's every corner, every drain,
I think there's two kind of versions of this, and I think that where they settle might be somewhere in between. But like version one is they go through and they say like, okay, who had obviously if anybody was like actively participating in this, they're done. But I mean, like, were there people here who had knowledge of this and didn't report it? So that's like kind of the Joe Paterno category. I think anybody in that category is gone. So that's kind of one end, and that's where I feel like Triple H could be in trouble because if the dude, and this is where I kind of, I do sympathize a little bit with somebody like Triple H in this scenario. If that dude is your father-in-law, it's a really complicated situation. You know what I mean? Like it's not just it's as much as people want to moralize and virtue signal about how if they were in that situation, I would have immediately done X, Y, and Z. And maybe you would have. But if it was also your wife's dad, I think it becomes a little more complicated. But the possibility that Triple H had knowledge of what was going on certainly is there. And if so, he's done. Okay. The other sort of end of that spectrum is they use this as an opportunity to say, we are going to send a message. And in the same way that, like, I don't know if you ever had a teacher who, and I never had a teacher who did this, I don't think, but like the teacher who's like, hey, I have found proof that like 2 people in this class cheated. So everybody gets a 0 or everybody gets an F. Like it could be that mentality and that approach, in which case everybody but essential, I'm not talking about on-air talent, but everybody who's essential backstage personnel would be gone and replaced by either new hires or more likely like UFC people who would, supervise. So that is a possibility. And if that's the case, I think you would see, we talked about this a lot around the time of the merger, but there was all this talk like, is the TV show going to look dramatically different? And I said at the time, like, I don't think so. I think they like the product they bought and they want it to continue. And so far that's been the case. This could be something that really changes that. If you do have, because not only will you have different personnel who have creative input into what the vision of the product is, but you would also have potentially a conscious desire to distance themselves from, or if not distance themselves, to demonstrate a pivot from the prior iteration of the product, especially if they're pivoting away, not just from Vince, which I think that's easy, but if they're pivoting away from Triple H and Michael Hayes and all of that crew, I think you could see something that looks very different. And last thought on this is, I do wonder if this is going to be something where, we sort of saw it, not sort of, we definitely saw it with the Slim Jim stuff, where behind the scenes, because of the proximity of all of this happening close to the Netflix deal, where they have invested $5 billion minimum, where Netflix or another partner is having sort of behind the scenes, like, look, we're not going to pull the deal, but we do want you to understand that we need to see certain markers of change.
That's what I wanted to, because I asked you about it a few weeks ago, like, is the Vince situation can put Netflix in jeopardy? And you didn't firmly say no, but you did not think so. Is that still your contention today, that if not so much if the investigation doesn't go as well as they were hoping, but if people like Triple H are gone, if people like, Michael, if the creative crew that brought this product to Netflix is now no longer there, is Netflix like, this isn't the product we sort of were expecting to buy? So it means it any more in jeopardy now than you think a few weeks ago?
I think it's, especially, I think when we talked about before, I'm not sure if Vince I can't remember the timing. I'm not sure if Vince had resigned yet. But Vince's resignation, I think, from Netflix perspective, I think closes the issue. In fact, I know that there was an interview, somebody asked, I can't remember her title, but it's chief of content.
She was some chief, yeah.
And Netflix, and they were like, the question was pretty broad. Like, do you have any concerns about this deal. And she was like, Vince is gone. Like, basically end of story.
Yeah.
Now, that's what she's saying publicly. I'm sure behind the scenes there have been conversations, but I think publicly she's like, no, done deal. And
Right.
I think they're going to stick with that. Even if the inevitable investigation reveals more people who knew about the wrongdoing or were, heaven forbid, involved in the wrongdoing, I still think you're going to wind up in the same place because they will all be gone too. And so uncovering more wrongdoing in this circumstance isn't necessarily going to do anything to imperil the deal, because it will simply lead to more dismissals and could be spun as a good thing. Like, look, we cleaned up our act. So I think you're going to see big changes there in terms of personnel behind the scenes relatively soon.
The Rock has taken up all the oxygen because we still need to cover things like, missing in action. LA Knight's been gone the last few weeks, like hasn't made much of an impact.
I was going to ask you, when you're talking about damage control, I was going to ask, like, sometimes I fast forward, I will admit, did they explain like where Dakota Kai is?
No, not really. Not that I really saw, but there's a lot that WWE needs to still set up, and they have a handful of weeks before Perth.
Yeah,
I mean, they have a handful of weeks after that. They usually like to have a good card sort of announced a good month ahead of time, but over the next few weeks, we're gonna get these announcements, and every interaction you see going forward on WWE TV on both shows should be, and probably NXT too. First of all, NXT shout out Dragunov and Trick Williams. Great match last Tuesday. The Trick Williams, the turn by what's his name?
Come on,
Who's
Carmelo
Hayes. Thank you very much. Another one that was a year in the making. You sort of saw it happen.
They're going to get a match at WrestleMania.
I could see Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams getting a match at WrestleMania. They definitely should. Braun Breaker kind of has now broken through. I think he's going to be main roster Brown pretty much. Congratulations to Corbin and Braun for winning the Dusty Classic. NXT, we record on Tuesdays, but now actually NXT just started 7 minutes ago. NXT's been having some great product. We don't talk about it enough. We'll need to start doing that. But
I know we're at time. I have one final question for you before we wrap up.
Yes.
Because you mentioned Perth.
Uh-huh.
And I will give you my answer after I ask this.
Okay.
Chances out of 100 that you get up at 4:30 and watch it live.
15 out of 100.
I am 0 and 0, maybe high.
0 point. You're getting the Dean Wormer 0.0. Okay. Yeah. Low chance. I mean, yeah, but
that's what streaming's for. Just start the stream whenever you have breakfast and watch. Do whatever you want. Like there's no reason to get up at 4:30. I just stay off Twitter.
I don't have as much going on right now outside of this podcast as you do, so I may just want to set my alarm and get up. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because I think it's going to set up a lot for WrestleMania, so it could be important. But again, nothing that I can't miss and watch it.
I'm saying I'm going to watch it. I'm saying I'm going to watch it at like 10 a.m. instead of 10 a.m.
I can stay off Twitter in the morning and not have to watch anything. Great show. Sheet said he's going to watch. We got into a lot of things today. We got a lot more to get into as we get to WrestleMania. We are, firmly on the road to WrestleMania. So go watch NXT tonight. Watch our show Thursday if we have one. I want to talk AEW with Cheats on Thursday. There's a lot going on there. Thanks again to RVA Wrestling and RVA Wrestling Academy. Check them out on your socials. Check us out on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. TG, any final thoughts?
Is Samoa Joe still the AEW World Champion?
He is. Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland are battling it out to see who's going to face him next at Revolution. And he's doing a great job. I love it. I'm not sure how long his reign's going to last, because I think it is Swerve's time.
Has MJF appeared on? I don't watch AEW anymore at all. Has MJF appeared on television since he lost the title?
Nope. He's out. Still out. And there's really been no even word as to whether he had any sort of shoulder procedures or medical procedures, and certainly no updates about his contract status. That's for sure.
I know that he, they're pretending like he hasn't resigned. I think most people have said behind the scenes he probably resigned a multi-year deal late last year.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say he didn't. Cody MJF at WrestleMania, would that do the trick?
I would have wanted him. They would have wanted to bring him out at Royal Rumble. Like he just the way when Cody showed up to face Seth Rollins, he had not been on. That was his debut, right?
Yep.
I only want that to happen if no one gets word of it. I don't want to report it on Twitter the morning of. I kind of remember that like everybody knew that Cody was the one who was going to come out against. I would want the absolute opposite. I would want like they're sending Cody out. Like, what's he going to do? I want nothing. That'd be maybe one of the only satisfying things to me if he's not involved in some main event somewhere. Ooh, I like that. I don't think it's going to happen though. But if it does, we're going to talk about it on this show on Tuesdays all the time. WCWF Pod on X, Wrestling Chat with Friends, the group. TG, thanks, man. Great show. Appreciate it. And we'll catch all you guys next week. Wrestling Chat with Friends. We're out.